Take a listen to this. Now, imagine this is the theme of an evil empire ruled by a god emperor, like what you might see in something like Star Wars. Not too difficult, right? Well, that's because it is actually the theme of an evil empire ruled by a god emperor. However, it actually exists in real life. This is a patriotic song of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, more commonly known as North Korea. This nation is an anomaly among modern states. It is uniquely totalitarian. Its leaders present themselves as divine figureheads to the population, and it commonly ranks as the worst country for human rights in the world. Approximately 10.4% of the population lives in some form of modern slavery, and the remaining population is subjected to mass surveillance by government networks. The economy has been stagnant since the 1980s, leaving the population impoverished, and any resources and technological development are invested into the military. Despite this reputation, North Korea presents itself as a democratic nation that promotes total societal equality. The North Korean Constitution's opening articles claim that the nation represents, quote, the interests of all the Korean people, and that, quote, sovereignty of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea resides in the workers, peasants, soldiers, working intellectuals, and all other working people. The Constitution talks in length about the nation's founder, Kim Il-sung, and his son and successor, Kim Jong-il, praising their contributions towards the development of their core ideologies, Juche and Songun. These two are presented as liberators who have established an ideal state with unmatched economic and social prosperity. Considering the current state of North Korea, it may seem at first glance that Kim Il-sung's glorious vision for the nation's future, embodied by the Constitution, has failed. However, North Korea's current circumstances are not a symptom of a broken system. It was designed with purpose to exploit the vast majority for the benefit of a select few. In this video, we'll look into North Korea's ideologies, how they helped to cause one of the worst famines in modern history, and why, despite all the struggles of the North Korean people, the government still commands absolute authority and maintains stability.
To understand North Korea's famine, we must first look at the founding ideology of Juche. Introduced in the 1960s by Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, Juche means self-reliance. It was presented as a revolutionary adaptation of Marxist-Leninist thought tailored to Korea's unique history and culture. The ideology emphasized three core principles: absolute independence from foreign influence, economic self-sufficiency, and militaristic self-defense. For a nation that had endured Japanese colonial rule and the devastation of the Korean War, Juche resonated as a vision of a sovereign, self-reliant Korea. But Juche was more than just an ideology. It was a tool for control. Kim Il-sung tied Juche to his cult of personality, portraying himself as the Suryeong, or supreme leader, the only one capable of guiding the nation to prosperity. This cult of personality became central to North Korea's political system, legitimizing Kim's absolute power.
Under Juche, North Korea pursued a rigid system of centralized economic planning. Industries were nationalized, agriculture was collectivized, and the economy was insulated from foreign influence. The regime aimed for self-sufficiency at every level: national, provincial, and even county. In agriculture, the government implemented the four modernizations: mechanization, electrification, irrigation, and chemicalization. These policies were heavily dependent on subsidized fuel and chemical fertilizers from communist allies like the Soviet Union and China. While these policies initially boosted agricultural output, they were unsustainable. Farmers had no autonomy, and the system relied entirely on external support. So when that support disappeared, the consequences would be catastrophic.
The 1990s brought a perfect storm of disasters for North Korea. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 cut off the flow of subsidized fuel and fertilizer, crippling the country's agricultural and industrial systems. At the same time, North Korea faced a series of natural disasters, including floods and droughts, which devastated crops. The regime's rigid adherence to Juche policies left no room for adaptation. The farmers were forced to continue using inefficient methods, and deforestation worsened soil degradation. By 1994, the situation had reached a breaking point. Kim Il-sung's death that same year left the country in chaos. His son, Kim Jong-il, inherited a nation on the brink of collapse. The result was the Arduous March, a famine that would last from 1994 to 1998 and claim the lives of hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people.
The Arduous March was a humanitarian catastrophe. Families were forced to survive on undesirable foods like rice roots, pine bark, and wine leaves. The public distribution system, which had provided rations to the population, collapsed. Even urban residents, who were usually shielded from hardship, faced severe food shortages. Estimates of the death toll vary widely, ranging from 500,000 to over 3 million. What is clear is that the famine was one of the deadliest in modern history, even rivaling China's Great Leap Forward.
Facing widespread suffering, the North Korean regime took on drastic measures to maintain control. Kim Jong-il doubled down on the Songun policy, prioritizing military spending over public welfare. Resources were diverted to the military, while the population starved. The government also launched propaganda campaigns to frame the famine as a noble struggle against foreign opposition. Terms like famine and hunger were banned. Instead, the crisis was referred to as the Arduous March, evoking the heroic struggles of Kim Il-sung's guerrilla fighters. Despite its rhetoric of self-reliance, the regime reluctantly accepted foreign aid from South Korea, Japan, and even the United States. This was a drastic departure from Juche principles, but the regime had no choice. At the same time, informal markets began to emerge as people sought alternative ways to survive. The government tolerated these markets out of necessity, but maintained strict controls over them.
Today, North Korea remains one of the most isolated and repressive regimes in the world. The famine exposed the fundamental flaws of Juche and the regime's economic policies, but little has changed. The country continues to invest heavily in its military and nuclear program, while the population suffers from chronic malnutrition and poverty. Over 40% of the population is undernourished, and access to basic resources, like electricity, remains limited. Despite these challenges, the regime has maintained stability through repression and ideological indoctrination. The cult of personality surrounding the Kim family remains central to North Korean society, and dissent is ruthlessly suppressed.
The story of North Korea's famine is a stark reminder of the dangers of ideological rigidity. Juche promised independence and prosperity, but its rigid application led to economic decline, agricultural failure, and unimaginable suffering. The regime's prioritization of military strength over public welfare, combined with its refusal to adapt to changing realities, has left the population in a state of chronic hardship. Yet the regime endures, a testament to the power of propaganda, repression, and ideological control. North Korea's story is not just one of famine and repression. It is a cautionary tale about the limits of ideology and the human cost of totalitarian rule.